Well, Mrs. H, Van said softly, it's a good thing I didn't wait for you. Reba looked up. What? I bought a house. Reba's heart stopped. You what? Without an inspection. Without me seeing it? I had to move fast, Van said, his chest puffing out. There were 15 other offers. I took it, as is. No risk, no reward, right? That's what the flippers do. Van, as is, in real estate means, this house is a portal to hell, Reba screamed. You used our money, our future, on a gamble? I believe in us, Van said, though his voice wavered slightly. I believe in your luck. You're like a four-leaf clover with a temper. Tomorrow, we go see the verdict. Chapter 5. The Revelation in the Driveway. The house was a beige bungalow that looked like it was sighing under the weight of its own existence. Reba stood on the sidewalk, clutching her briefcase like a shield. I can't do it, Van, she whispered. If we walk in there and the inspector tells us the foundation is cracked, we lose everything. I'm not lucky. Every time something good happens, the other shoe drops, and usually it's a heavy boot. Van walked over to her. He didn't look like the goofy kid who put forks in toasters anymore. He looked like a man who understood something Reba had forgotten. Mrs. H. You think you're jinxed, Van said. But look at me. When my parents kicking me out, I found a home with you. When I got hurt, you helped me heal. When Cheyenne was struggling with the sauce, you were the one who kept the light on. Reba felt a tear prick her eye. Van, that is the sweetest, most manipulative thing you have ever said. I mean it. Now, do you want to back out? I'll take the hit. I'll let you off the hook right now before we hear the report. Reba looked at the house. She looked at Van. For the first time in years, she felt a spark of that old fire. No, I'm in. Let's see what we bought. The inspector walked out of the front door, wiping his brow. He looked at them solemnly. Well, the house is a dump. Van's face fell. Reba felt the world tilt. Just kidding. The inspector grinned. I love doing that. The house is solid. Roof is new. Plumbing is copper. And the foundation is like a rock. You guys got a steal. Reba nearly collapsed with relief. Van, we did it. We're flippers. As they celebrated, the inspector turned to Van. Funny though, usually people don't pay for 2 inspections in 1 week. Reba froze. 2 inspections? The inspector nodded. Yeah, Van had me out here last Tuesday before he put the offer in. He knew the house was perfect before he even showed it to you. Reba turned to Van, her eyes narrowing. You set me up. The whole lucky speech. The as-is gamble. You knew all along. Van shrugged, a slow, guilty smile spreading across his face. I believe in you, Mrs. H, but I'm not an idiot. I'm a businessman. Chapter 6. The Shadow of Two Names. Victory, Reba soon discovered, had a very specific scent. Stale cigarette smoke and wet dog. That was the primary olfactory profile of the steel Van had purchased. As they stood in the living room the following morning, the reality of their situation began to sink in. The walls were a shade of yellow that suggested the previous owners had been heavy smokers or very confused about interior design. The carpet felt like it was alive, and not in a friendly, Pixar movie kind of way. Okay, Van, Reba said, snapping a pair of yellow rubber gloves onto her hands. We have the house, we have the luck, now we need the labor. If we want to flip this before the bubble bursts, we need to be out of here in 30 days. 30 days? Van scoffed, waving a crowbar around like a scepter. Mrs. H, I was a linebacker. I can move walls. I can move mountains. A little wallpaper isn't going to stop the Montgomery Hart juggernaut. Suddenly, the front door creaked open, admitting a sliver of bright Texas sunshine and a man who looked like he had been manufactured in a factory that produced smugness and expensive teeth. Well, the man said, his voice a smooth, oily drawl. If it isn't the dynamic duo. And by dynamic, I mean desperate. Reba's spine stiffened. David Davids. What are you doing here? Did you run out of other people's listings to exploit? David Davids stepped into the room, his Italian leather loafers clicking ominously on the hardwood floor that was currently covered in grime. I heard you two actually bought this lemon. I'm here as a friend, Reba. A mentor, if you will. I'd rather take advice from a bag of hammers, Reba snapped. I'm serious, David said, leaning against a doorframe that looked suspiciously like it had wood rot. This neighborhood is shifting. The froth is turning into a foam. I'll do you a favor. I'll take this off your hands right now. Full price of what you paid, plus $5,000 for your trouble. Consider it a failure insurance policy. Van stepped forward, the crowbar still in his hand. $5,000? You made 50 on the last one. Davy, 2 names. You think we're that stupid? David smiled, a slow, shark-like expression. I think you're out of your league. Real estate isn't about heart, Reba. It's about cold, hard numbers. And these numbers, they don't look good for you. You've got 30 days before the interest on that bridge loan starts eating your soul. See you at the auction. He turned and strolled out, the sound of his Porsche idling in the driveway serving as a final insult. Reba looked at Van. The silence in the dusty room was heavy. He's right about one thing, she whispered. The clock is ticking. Chapter 7. The Hammer of Justice. The first week of renovation was a descent into a specific kind of hell. Reba, Van, and a very reluctant Cheyenne were the primary labor force. Van's approach to demolition was enthusiastic but unguided. He had managed to take down a non-load-bearing wall in 20 minutes, but he had also accidentally severed a water line that flooded the kitchen. It's a water feature, Van shouted as he tried to plug the leak with his thumb. It adds value. It's organic. Reba was currently balanced on a ladder, scraping 3 decades of popcorn ceiling off with a spatula. Van, if you call one more disaster organic, I am going to bury you in the backyard and tell the police you were a natural fertilizer. Cheyenne was in the corner, wearing a designer face mask and gingerly painting a baseboard. I don't see why we can't just hire people, Mom. This is ruining my manicure. I think I'm developing a permanent allergy to 1,982. We can't hire people because we spent all the money on the down payment and the as-is closing costs. Reba grunted, a flake of ceiling landing in her hair. Sweat equity. Cheyenne. That's what flips are made of. As the sun began to set, casting long, orange shadows through the bare windows, Brock pulled up in his SUV. He looked tired, but he was carrying several bags of fast food, the universal olive branch of the Hart family. I brought sustenance, Brock announced, stepping over a pile of discarded drywall. And news. Is the news that you've decided to pay for a contractor? Reba asked hopefully. No. The news is that Barbara Jean has decided she is a visionary designer, Brock said with a sigh. She's been watching HGTV for 18 hours straight. She has a mood board. And Reba, it involves a lot of turquoise. Reba closed her eyes. Lord, give me the stones to survive this. Chapter 8. The Turquoise Temptation. Barbara Jean arrived the next morning like a whirlwind of ruffles and enthusiasm. She was carrying a stack of magazines and a paint fan that was 90% neon. Reba, honey, I have it, she squealed, hugging Reba and leaving a faint scent of lavender and desperation on her work shirt. The friendly, Texas's aesthetic. We're going to make this house feel like a warm hug from a neighbor you actually like. Barbara Jean, Reba said slowly, trying to maintain her sanity. We want people to see themselves here, not a hug from a stranger. Oh, Reba, you're so cynical, Barbara Jean said, spreading her magazines across a dusty countertop. Look at this. Boho chic Western Zen. It's the next big thing. We need a feature wall in the living room. Something bold. Something that says, I have a personality, and I'm not afraid to use it. Van walked in, covered in sawdust. I like bold. Bold is good. Is it as bold as putting a fork in a toaster? It's bolder, Van, Barbara Jean cried. It's turquoise dream. For the next 4 hours, Reba fought a losing battle against the turquoise tide. Every time she turned her back, Barbara Jean was pitching a whimsical light fixture or a tile pattern that looked like a kaleidoscope had an accident. But as Reba watched Barbara Jean work, watched the way she genuinely cared about making the space beautiful, she realized something. Barbara Jean wasn't just trying to design a house. She was trying to design a place where she belonged. Okay, Reba said, finally putting down her scraper. One feature wall, in the small bedroom. If the buyers hate it, we can paint over it in an hour. Barbara Jean's face lit up like a Christmas tree. Oh, Reba, you won't regret this. It's going to be a masterpiece. As Barbara Jean skipped off to the hardware store, Reba looked at Van. We are going to lose so much money, aren't we? Van put an arm around her, his dusty shoulder rubbing against hers. Maybe. But hey, at least we'll have stones. Turquoise ones. Chapter 9. The Dust and the Dream. By the middle of the second week, the steel house had been stripped to its bones. The turquoise feature wall was done, looking like a neon bruise in the middle of a beige room, but Barbara Jean was delighted. Reba, on the other hand, was calculating the cost of a bucket of white primer. It's about the journey, Mrs. H., Van said, his face smeared with soot. He had spent the morning in the crawl space, trying to figure out why the guest bathroom smelled like low tide. The journey is currently costing us $500 a day in interest, and I'm pretty sure Cheyenne just threw her wedding ring into the dumpster by accident. Reba replied, pointing to her daughter, who was currently waist-deep in construction debris. I found it, Cheyenne shrieked, emerging with a coffee-stained hand clutching a diamond. And a vintage soda bottle. Maybe we can sell this on eBay? Every little bit helps, Reba muttered.